All right, Dr. Clem. Hey, did we have fun last night with Mark Fleming? What a great guy he is, huh?
It brought back old feelings of dental school. Actually, I love dental school.
Yeah.
And to connect with people of the same chronological experience in life is pretty cool.
Yeah, you and I are very blessed in many ways, but one of the things we're very blessed with is being able to talk to leaders in our dental community and find out what
Huge.
their goals are and their ambitions and what they're doing to drive team members into a better place. It's been inspiring. So I thank you for helping me along in my own journey with all this.
Well,
Oh,
you
Mark.
know,
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mark Fleming just said, "Thank you, guys. I had fun."
oh
Thanks,
yeah.
Mark.
Hey,
Thanks,
thank
bro.
Mark. Are
We
you?
appreciate
I
you.
hope he's with his grandbaby out in the pool. Maybe that's where
Yes, I
he
bet he
needs to
is.
be right now. And you know, I know you and I and our guests today are leaders in some aspects of what we do, but I'm probably more of a student than anything else. I have so many mentors in life, both in dentistry and out of dentistry, and I'm a student. I always will be a student, and I want to be learning the last hour of my life.
Nah,
And
I'm gonna
because
nah. Everybody watching here knows you're an educator, but so we know you're just being
I'm a
humble. But
student too. Yeah.
I will tell you this though: the reason why you're such a great educator and such a great inspirational man is because you are a student. It's because you're constantly learning. Whatever
Yeah.
subject you think makes yourself better, you're all over it, and so. We know when people are like that, and James Clem, you are definitely that
Well,
inspirational leader, dentistry and spiritually. So thank you.
we want to
All right.
bless others in life. I think I'm at that stage in life, and I think I had that in common with Mark last night, of where, you know, when you get in your 60s, you think how you going to leave it all behind, and the way you leave it behind is you gift other people,
Man, you
and
guys are
and
old. You're still old.
we are.
I just
Hey, and you know, even though we work for a living and we run businesses, when it's all said and done, it's not the money you leave behind, it's what you touch people's hearts with. And I get that from my dad. You know, now that my dad is gone, I value more what he gave me than when he was alive, because I saw what it did to other people. And if there's nothing else I can do, just a little bit, is to leave something behind where other people are encouraged and they have a better life. I don't know. I woke up with this feeling today. Even my dog, he's a little more mellow today. He's laying on the floor here. He's into the routine now. He knows when I'm live. He lays on the floor and he sleeps.
uh-huh. Mark Fleming just said you guys are chronologically gifted. That is true.
Yeah. Well, he was talking about me, not you.
Well, I'm like 30 years younger than I think both of you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that. I'm only 10 years behind. But anyway,
Hey,
no,
go,
the thing.
go with it.
Where I'm kind of feeling that, and I bet our next guest will bring this up too,
Oh
because he
yeah.
has about the same age kids as I do. Now that my kids are graduating from high school and they're getting into their next chapter of life, I'm thinking, wait, what just happened? How did this happen? Where did the time go? And I think, I wish they were 12 again, but they're not. So anyway, I guess that was one of the cool messages from Mark last night, was getting reinvigorated with his grandkids. So. Do you have any deep thoughts for us today, brother?
Yeah, it's going to segue into our guest, because everyone knows him as T-Bone, Dr. Tarun Agarwal, and 3D dentist, and I'm a huge fan. And I'm going to get on his case because he's not doing the early morning cast anymore. And I used to get up and answer emails and watch him and Aaron Elliott, and they blessed my life, and I miss that. But I watch him all the time. But this is actually a quote. It's really short and sweet, but it's from Clement Stone. He came out of the Great Depression, where he was broke, and he turned it around and became very successful. And this is what he says, and I think it's very poignant for us today. It takes less work to succeed than to fail. Less work. And the reason when we fail is how you react to it, because the success of life is based off of just having a better mindset of what we do. And our guest is the king of that. And there he is.
There you are, brother. Thanks for joining us. What a big honor for us to have you on
Well,
this show.
listen, I think the honor's mine, to be quite honest with you. And you guys build me up too much. I'm going to disappoint people. But, I think,
Not at all.
I think to kind of piggyback into so much of what you guys are talking about, I think it's experiences that really shape who we are, who we've been, and who we will be in the future. And dentally speaking, I've been through a few different experiences. One was 2001, which had an impact. And for me, that was my startup year. So it had an impact. 2008, 2009 had a massive transformational impact on my life, dentally and personally. And then 2020 will go down as an impactful year. And the truth is no matter how dark or how grim it looks, humanity, it's the human spirit, it's the human belief. And sometimes that is not a choice. It's a necessity that really brings us forward and allows us to get better. I mean, and we have to look at life lessons all around us, not just what we're seeing in dentistry.
So what have you been doing in this downtime? Have you been running your courses, or what's been taking your time?
Well, I struggled for the first couple of weeks to find purpose and to find a rhythm.
Right.
For the first time in my life, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm also proud to say it, is I didn't have the financial stress of like, am I going to come through this? Is this going to happen? And so that part was not there, but it was more about, hey, what do I do? And it took my wife, and I get a lot of credit for things, but so much of what I do or say or how I react is built upon those around me who push me. And my wife said to me one day, she says, you've got to get into a routine because I'm a very routine-driven person. So she said, when you can't, she said, basically, if you can't get it into yourself, let's put people around you who will help you have a routine. So she called one of my team members and she said, listen, I need you to come to the house every day like it's work, and work starts at 8:30. And work is going to be very different. Work was, you're going to go for a walk every morning, 2-3 miles. We're just gonna, in a sense, baby me into a routine because I'm so used to a very rigid structure. And things started looking a lot better for me at that point. And then about 2 weeks in, I started getting that my vibe back about, hey, we're going to be fine. What do I got to do? We've kept busy. We've rebrought our training programs back by going online and virtual. Both free information, paid information. We've connected with team members. We've thought through what changes we're going to be forced to make on a short-term basis. And then now I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what changes do I need to make on a long-term basis? What are the lessons that I need to learn from this? 2001 taught me the lesson that I should take insurance and be okay with taking insurance as a way to build up a level of practice that keeps me sustained. 2008, 2009 taught me that I have to have a savings plan and that I can't be a one-trick pony, that I have to have a diverse practice. And then the question is what is right? And then the question is what is 2020 going to teach us? And it's too early to know because we don't know, right? So we have to figure out what is 2020 going to teach us. And what I'm afraid of is that if we walk out of this doing exactly what we did before, if we walk out of this with truly just a pause, and then we get right back to business as usual, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but there's some bads in that because then we're not prepared for the next time this happens or something similar happens, whether it's worse or better or whatever it is, when we're not gaining that experience of doing it. So we have to figure out what is going to change. And that's my fight right now, is to try to help myself and dentists figure out what are the changes that we need to make from this.
I follow quite a few YouTubers. I'm a big fan of people that grow their business that way. And most of them that are very successful have multiple sources of revenue.
Right.
Because things go in cycles. And my challenge would be to dentists is have multiple sources of skill sets so you can pivot on a dime. And I know that your education at 3D Dentist, which I think is the pinnacle of education with what you do and the heart that you put into it, will help people to learn those pinnacles. Like, for instance, sleep dentistry.
Yeah.
Everyone should be doing that. I wear a sleep appliance, and I remember hearing Dr. Aaron, I was going to call her Dr. Aaron, but Dr. Elliott speak at the, just a few years ago. And I was just thinking, you folks are raising the bar and things that we need to know about, and what you're giving back with your education on implants and about everything. I refer people out to you all the time. They're going, I need to learn implants. I go, well, 3D dentist, T-Bone, he's the guy. And I said, he's going to give you his heart. I love you because you're transparent. You speak your mind, and that's a really important thing to do. So I celebrate what you do, and your advice is so poignant because you've lived the life. You know what it means to survive, and I think that's what our audience needs to hear.
Yeah, but we all know what it means to survive. We all do.
Yeah.
It's inside each of us, and it's just a matter of how hard are we willing to go to get it.
Yeah.
And but what do you guys think is going to be the big change from 2020?
Well, let me interject just for a second, because we had one of our top viewed guests, Jenny Apekian. She's watching, and she says 2020 will teach us who's in it for their patients and team, and who's in it for themselves. And I was kind of thinking that, but not wanting to say it. So thank you, Jenny, for saying that. I think all of us have been reading a lot on Facebook and different places, and there's a lot of separation in team member and dentist commitments. And I think maybe it's okay to cut off a little bit of our teams. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't want to say an argument, but I was having a conversation in my Facebook group yesterday about, I'm a big believer that you got to focus on growth, and that you don't grow by saving. Okay. And I kept talking about how we need to work on saving and saving and saving. And one of my friends said to me that you've always talked about growth. And I said, I think I'm saying this wrong. What I really want, at least what I'm doing, I can't say what other people should do. But right now I'm working on simplification, because here's what I believe happened in this pandemic for us as dentists, as dental business owners, is that we didn't run into a practice financial issue. We ran into a personal financial issue. Because to be quite frank, our practices were made whole because, one, we were able to let go of our team, and they were able to be made, largely made whole through unemployment benefits or supercharged unemployment benefits. We were able to look to some of our loans and get a delay in that. So we were really able to get our practice down to almost minimal overhead or minimal cost.
Shrink it.
Right. And then we were able to still collect on past due balances, or we should have been collecting on past due balances. So in theory, we didn't have a financial issue within our practice. But what we probably had was a big financial issue on a personal level. And so really, for me, a lot of what I'm doing right now is I'm thinking about where can I simplify my life, my personal life, and how can that affect the decisions I make in my practice. In other words, do I need to be as big, or do I need to be bigger? Do I need to be there as much, or do I need to be there less? Do I need to get rid of certain procedures because while they produce revenue, are they producing top line revenue with minimal bottom line revenue? And then all that does is just create a bigger machine that has to run. And so I want people to learn how to simplify, or at least experience what it would be like to simplify. And dentistry is a small business, and small businesses, there's not much of a divide between the revenue in a practice and the revenue at home, because they're ultimately directly related. Yeah. So
well stated.
So the easiest way to prepare for something like this again, whether that's a few months from now or several years from now, is to live well below our means, or to live with true meaning. In other words, do we need to have that second or third car? Do we need to have such a big house? Do we need to have all this technology in our practices? Do we need to have so many people in our practices? Do we need to take insurance or take more insurances? And all of these things are things that we need to be looking at. We don't have to make decisions at this point, but we should be looking at that and figure out what is it that it takes to really live a great life that you're happy with.
I couldn't have said it any better. I think, Personally, as you were kind of chronologically timing out the heartaches, and in 2008, you said you needed to diversify a little bit more. That's where I'm at. I'm coming out of this going to do more and not be so focused on like I've always made a joke that blood makes me throw up. It doesn't make me throw up. It doesn't.
It needs to stop making you throw up.
It doesn't make me throw up. I've just always made that joke because I just hated doing extractions, but I'm bringing them back. I'm going to start doing some other things. And so just hearing you say that confirms what I've decided to do. So thank you for that.
Well, in 2008, I was a restorative dentist. That's all I did. Right. I didn't do root canals. I didn't do, if it wasn't
That's
involved,
me right now.
If it didn't involve smoking off enamel, I didn't do it. And I was living on the home runs, and luckily we were able to live off home runs then. I was doing three 10-unit cases a month, which, I know to some people that's nothing, but to me, that was the difference between having a month that made money and not made money.
Right.
And so much of that went away. Or maybe my mindset made it go away. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I'll take my life and practice today over my life and practice in 2007 any day of the week.
I got to interrupt. Sorry, Jay, hang on just one second. Because Mona Patel says that you only did sealants. She said you only did sealants. Your whole practice was based on preventative care.
That's because I didn't do any sealants at all. But because the ADHA won't let me do sealants.
Oh, go ahead, James. Sorry to interrupt. I thought
I was just going to make a comment. I can already tell you that I'm going to watch this several times and take notes, because I think you just said a lot of wisdom within a business model, is that if you live off your home runs, when the home runs don't happen, you still have to get on first base. So run a business about just getting on base, even if you have to walk occasionally.
Yeah, one of the things I struggle with today from an educational perspective or a leading perspective is I have to remember that 90% of the people I'm talking to are at a place I was at 10 years ago. Yeah. And I've forgotten a lot about what it was like then. So we have to make them understand why we're doing it. And that, look, at the end of the day, I could stop my practice and literally build a implant-only practice because, one, I've got the financial wherewithal to withstand things. And two, I've developed a reputation that the community will support that. But I would never recommend that to anybody at their current state. And so I'm always a big believer that 70% of your practice has to be a tried and true bread and butter general dentistry practice. You should never give that away. You should just give it away to somebody else within your four walls, called an associate or a partner. And then you, as the owner who's taken all the risk and has kept up with changing clinical aspects, then you should be plucking and picking and choosing what you do from within your practice. Because at the end of the day, if things really hit the fan, I can go back to doing general dentistry. I won't like it, but if that's what it takes to pay the bills, I can always do that. So I think that's why diversity is so important. And the truth is that diversity procedures within dentistry are the procedures that actually pay on a bottom line very well. I mean, if you think about it, the most profitable specialty is oral surgery, followed by orthodontics. And those are some of the most profitable and diverse procedures that general dentists can add to their practices. And we have to.
Yeah, you got some great comments coming through. Some of them I can't read because there are some bad words in some of these. So I'm trying to weed through.
I appreciate the
bad words. Mona Patel, she's on. She's a big fan of yours. T-Bone truly has the best advice for running the business of dentistry. I do believe that, and I do listen to your podcasts and everything. They're fun to listen to. So James, you were gonna say?
No, one thing I think about you is I have a mentor outside of dentistry who I have followed in developing my online business, and he's one of the most successful people online, and he's in one of the most competitive markets. And his whole point has been is you give more away than you take in everything you do. And I think of you, and you give so much away. And that's what makes a difference in our profession is they know you're genuine, they know you're transparent, and in the long run, those are the blessings that we give back. And that's what I'm wanting to do more of, is give more away than I take. And in the long run, that path will be set out for you, and you'll know what you need to do in life. And that evolves. Another person on a prior webcast said that, visions evolve. They don't stay in one place. Like we got a vision now, right? But I'm looking at you, and you've developed several new visions due to the circumstances. And that's why I had that quote, is where that it takes less work to succeed than to fail. And that is the legacy you're going to leave in our profession, because you're helping so many other people learn to understand that. And you've already said that.
I hope so. It's interesting, James. You said that we have to have diverse streams of income. And frankly speaking, I've done a good job of that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I've picked 3 diverse streams right now that are all suffering. My number one stream is my dental practice, which has been closed or which has been on pause. My educational business, which has essentially been, when it's been driven by live events, has been on pause. And then our hotel business is just getting crushed right now. And but again, it comes back to a concept that my dad talked to me about. And I don't think he really knew some of the wisdom that he was saying to me. And, in the hotel business, one of the things that he learned was that every so many years you have to update. Not because your consumers are asking for it, but because your franchisor is asking for it. In other words, Holiday Inn, Marriott, Hilton, whoever it is saying that you can no longer have tube TVs in the rooms. You got to have flat screen TVs in the room. You can no longer just have flat screen TVs. You now have to have smart TVs in the rooms. And then when you start looking at 200-300 unit places, then you suddenly say, oh, it's only $500 a TV times 200 or 300. It's a boatload of money, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I always heard him talk about was that they escrow money away every year for future planned expenses. And so one of the things I've always been good at since 2009 is that every year I escrow 2 to 3% of my top line revenue for planned not obsolescence. In other words, for the technology or the renovation or the spring cleaning updates that we need. And not because that 2-3% pays for all of it, but that 2-3% makes it easy to get the loan, to have the down payment, or to not put yourself in a leveraged position in your practice. So I hope people can understand that all it really takes is 2-3% of top line revenue as a savings, as retained earnings in tax terms, to allow you to really position your practice to make logical decisions in investments for the long-term growth of your practice.
Wow, that was powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some funny comments.
And you got to read the bad ones. Read the bad ones.
Well, they weren't too bad because no, I'll just say. So Dhaval Patel's watching.
Oh, Dhaval.
And he says he referring to you that he is a coconut. So I guess that sounds.
Yes. So what coconut means is that I'm brown on the outside and white on the inside.
Oh.
So that because I was born in India, but I moved here when I was 2, so I'm essentially American. So I'm a coconut. I would argue with Dhaval that I'm more Oreo cookie, because coconut is very light brown skin, whereas I'm much a darker brown skin than the average Indian.
Funny.
The other thing I was talking about, because I want to challenge people. I know we want to uplift, but I think a lot of uplifting comes from people not being so rah-rah. In other words, some tough love,
Right.
I had this conversation, and my dad's always on me about this. This is one area where he is probably more disappointed in me than he would ever let me know, is that he goes, I was talking to him about, I need a bigger place. This was, several years ago. I need a bigger place. And he goes, oh, do you really? And I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, there's probably some legitimate hours that your practice could be open. A dentist practice is not going to be 24 hours a day. I mean, it can be, but that's not legitimate. So we decided that legitimate business hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 12 hours a day. Legitimate business hours for a good life and everything is probably 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Friday, okay? And then maybe 7 a.m. to noon on Saturday. So legitimately, an office has probably close to 60 hours of legitimate business hours per week while maintaining, look, you can open till 10 o'clock at night, you can open Sundays, but I'm talking about some level of like some level of lifestyle there. And so he goes, you're open 32 hours a week. You're only using your office half the time that you could. And today, the biggest cost after you take away, the number one cost in every practice is the dentist. The number two cost in every practice is the team members. And then the number three cost, and depending on where you're at in your practice life, it could be number two, is your facility cost. Because facility cost is the real estate and or rent, the upfit cost to make it an office, which is significant, and then the equipment that it takes to make it a well-running office. And in today's world, so James, when you started, or Todd, when you started, technology was a fancy chair that motorized went up and down.
You got it.
Instead of a car seat where you pulled a lever, But today it's not unusual to expect a practice to start with CBCT, digital impressions, certain amounts of technology. And yes, technology is not $250,000 like when all three of us bought that technology. Yeah. But today it can easily be $100,000 to get in starter level. And then between digital X-rays, you suddenly start looking at $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in the cost of starting a practice, and it becomes a significant expense on percentage wise, and yet we're using that facility so little. So I think another thing that should come away from 2020 is that we need to start looking at using our facilities more, combining forces. Instead of maybe, look, if you come to my block in Raleigh, North Carolina, there are 8 dentists on my block, and 6 of us have CAD/CAM and cone beam. But why couldn't we all just combine into one big ass office, and we wouldn't need 6 of these things? We'd probably only need 3 of these things. And I don't mind getting up and playing golf early in the morning, so I could play golf from 7 to 10 every day, and then go to work at 11 o'clock and work till 7 o'clock in the evening, right? Or maybe you're James's age and you don't have young kids at home, and you could do the later hours, okay? Or maybe you're like me, where you do have young kids at home and you could do the early hours. And I think, if as a profession, if we're going to thrive and be more than just and I don't want to say this demeaningly, but if we want to be more than just a $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 income, if we really want to be what we're worth and have significant income, then we're going to have to compete with the DSOs or corporates or well-funded. And the way to do that is to understand what they're doing. And very few DSOs, very few are single operator offices. They're just not, because it makes no business sense or financial sense to be that way in today's modern dentistry. So again, what is old is new again. And the 70s were full of group practices, and early 80s were full of group practices. And then we had a move towards solo practices. And I hope that we have a move towards group practices again, because I think it's what we're going to need.
Well, another thing that Deanna Schnetzer brought up, what they're dealing with in Colorado is they've developed a group of dentists of several thousand, I believe she said, or at least it's over 1,000, and that gives them better purchasing power. Yeah. And there's another concept of developing community. I think within dentistry, I don't see a lot of community, even in my town, because everyone thinks they're competitors. But yet on the other side of that is that if we were to connect more with each other, we get ideas. That's what Todd and I are trying to do. We're trying to connect with our community, get ideas. Yep. You've already given us a lot of ideas today, but if we even connected more as groups, even if you're not in the same facility, you would have the ability to negotiate purchasing power within whatever it would take. And that's what what's your thought on that?
Oh, it's a great point. Okay. But look, I don't think that stuff moves the needle enough. Okay. So group purchasing organizations exist, okay? Yeah. And by and large, the distributors are naturally doing that because their business is going to go away if they don't, okay? Mm-hmm. So if we take something that's a 7 or 8% of our bottom line, of our overall revenue, and I cut that at a third.
It doesn't
make a lot of difference.
It adds up, don't get me wrong. So, in a practice like mine, $2.5 million, and if I can stake 2 or 3% off the bottom line, don't get me wrong, I'd like $50,000 or $60,000. But what I'd rather do is I spend more than that on rent and equipment, that I'd rather put all that energy, instead of into group purchasing organizations, I'd rather put that energy into a group dentist organization.
Yeah.
And because if I could bring one dentist in, that cuts my fixed overhead in half.
Right.
And my fixed overhead is a 10, 20, 30% revenue line versus a 7 or 8% revenue line. So it comes back to that. You can't save yourself to riches. You're going to have to grow. And so to me, the benefit of the group purchasing organizations are going to be limited, because at some point they can only discount so much.
They can only reach so much. That's true. I think my thinking was develop more of a community, even in thought. Just sure. What our audience is getting from you today is a huge deal, because you're thinking out of the box. And that's Sasha mentioned that in our interviews. He said you have to think on the edges, because if you stay in the middle, you're just going to follow the herd over the cliff. And,
the easiest way for us to create community is for all of us to leave the ADA and then make them change and then rejoin. Because
right.
It's no different than politicians, correct?
Yeah.
The only way for us to make real change, which we all need, black, white, red, yellow, purple, blue, it doesn't matter, is we need to clean it. I mean, and the ADA serves a purpose. I personally still am yet to see what purpose they serve, but they serve a purpose, and I don't think that they felt the pressure that we are asking for something different, because we have not voted with the one power we have, which is our wallet. And I can promise you, if they went down in 20 or 30% of members paying dues, they would listen very quickly. Because now we're not giving them a reason to listen.
Yeah, they may just kick off some of the insurance companies off their coding committees, which, that's not right. It's the American Dental Association, not the American Dental Insurance Association. So,
that's because they pay more money than we do.
Right. So that proves your point. Going back to the 7 to 8% of your expenses and trying to save that. The thing I look at it like also is it worth saving like 2 or 3% to lose the opportunity of a local Patterson or Henry Schein business that actually services your equipment? So if you were one day out of a compressor, you're going to lose all that money in itself. And so I still look at my service agents as part of my team. So I'm not going to cut them out.
Yeah, I think ultimately the market will speak, and you'll see more and more independent service agents. You'll see something happen, and the question always going to become is who is going to be able to be sustained, and who is going to be able to scale at what the market needs. And there's no right or wrong answers to that. Okay, so I look at it kind of the conversation we're having is. Practices go through a growth phase, and then we go through an optimization phase. So, for example, James may be in an optimization phase in his life because he's the best looking 60-year-old I know. So,
it's the makeup. It's the makeup.
Well, I need to figure that out. But he may be more in an optimization phase. In other words, he may say, you know what, I'm not willing to run like I used to run, but I want to grow, and maybe I'll optimize my practices a point or 2 points or 3 points to get that bottom line growth that I need. Whereas someone like me, go ahead.
No, just so you know, I've actually been interviewing dentists for several years now, and I want to bring other dentists in to utilize our facility more. I kind of like my independence because I teach there, but more of my teaching is going online. So I know by bringing, like, your recommendation is exactly what I'm trying to do right now. is bring in more people, utilize your facility more so that you can serve more people. And I think your advice is imperative that we consider that.
Well, I think James, I don't want to say your problem, but
I have issues.
Your struggle is going to be the same struggle I had and continue to have in that you have your standard and your bar is too high. Yeah. And when I I went through like 4 associates in a year because I expected them all to have the same level of passion and commitment that I had. And, it wasn't until I realized I'm just not going to, I might get lucky and find that. And so it's the same thing I tell other people. Like I have a good classmate in Kansas and she's like, I keep trying to find an associate. I said, well, your problem is you just need to go dating. Just go date somebody and see if they become because you didn't meet your wife and know at first sight that this is the woman I'm going to marry.
Well, yeah, actually he did. Actually, he did.
Actually, the avenue I'm looking at is there's several other dentists in town who I'd really admire, and we're talking about just bringing our merging practices, utilize one facility, and I think that's actually going to be one of the tools to get through this. We're going to have to think differently with that. And I think what you're saying today, people need to be listening to that.
Yeah, on that same note, you mentioned the big group, or the DSOs, I'm sorry.
Sure.
They're seeing tons of people in one day, and with the workflow that's coming out of this stoppage, do you think that's going to hurt them a lot, or do you think it's just going to go back to normal? Because we're having to separate times more for PPE and stuff like that.
Sure. Let's. I can't answer that question because I'm not living in that world. But here's what I'll tell you: they will figure out a way to do it better than they were doing before. I'll give you an example because it hit me yesterday. Why is Chick-fil-A prospering in this time? Because they've moved all their business to the drive-through.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And they made it so easy for me yesterday to order. And I've never seen this there before, so maybe it's been there forever and I didn't see it. But they had a subliminal sign in their drive-through on a stand. I talk about subliminal dentistry, the need to subliminally market your patients with signage in your office that said, make life easy, order a family pack. And a family pack was for 4 people, you get 4 sandwiches, 4 sides, cookies, and a gallon of iced tea. And they didn't even have a price on it. And I just said, I need that. Which I didn't want to sit there and ask my kids what they wanted. And but see, what happens is, I bet you it wasn't an owner-operator that came up with that idea. It was somebody on the top level end, because they're not diluted and biased by twiddling on teeth all day long, right?
Right.
So, and that's what my point in saying that is I think the DSOs and practices where the owners get out of being operators or get more out of being an operator are going to be the ones that come up with innovative solutions. Let's look at Chipotle. I did a podcast recently talking about Chipotle versus Taco Bell. Chipotle was the most ready franchise for this pandemic because they had already gone to a contactless model where you order on the app and they have it on a shelf for you and you just walk in and pick it up. So they didn't have to reinvent their wheel because they were already thinking about this, not as a pandemic, but a couple of years ago. And I know we can't do drive-through dentistry, and I know we can't do, shelf pickup dentistry, but that's what I'm talking about. The developments that we're going to need from this 2020 pandemic are going to be something like that. How are we going to make it easier for our patients to want to do business with us? And that is where their solo private practice, relative non-entrepreneurial dentist is really going to suffer to DSOs, because patients don't want to go to DSOs necessarily. But the DSOs make it so attractive to go there because they make it convenient. And that attractiveness is not price. I'll argue that the average DSO fee is higher than the average private practice fee out there across the board. So we got to figure out, what is it that dentistry is going to do? Is it Is it any one thing? We don't know yet. Or is it a combination of things? Is it going to be like, let me complain about some companies real quick. You guys let me know when
you go right ahead.
Hey, you're at the pulpit, you're preaching, and we're listening.
I'll turn your mic up. Go ahead. You start complaining.
Like, why is it that we're in 2020 and I can't take a payment with my phone or my iPad or my tablet in the operatory with contactless payment? Why isn't it that that tablet or that iPad isn't integrated into my practice management software? And, dentistry is so freaking worried about saving pennies with these stupid Facebook groups and all the other nonsense, the nifty, thrifty bullshit and all that crap, whatever it is, okay? And I apologize if I offend some people, okay, because I want to. Instead, what we need to be doing is, instead of voting with saving 1%, what we need to do is go to these companies and go to them and say, what will it take to make this happen? And what we're doing, by the way, in this effort to save 1% or 2% is we're handcuffing innovation from the companies. Innovation comes from companies making profits. CAD/CAM innovation came from a company to make a profit. Whatever it is, innovation has a cost. And if we get our practices or our profession down to such a commodity, we won't have any innovation. Dental implant innovation came because somebody was willing to pay the equivalent of $500, $600, $700 for dental implants at the time.
Right.
Innovation in CAD/CAM came because we were willing to pay, for God's sakes, $80,000 in the late mid 90s for a CAD/CAM system. It's like Elon Musk. If you think about what he's done, is he's gone out there and said, the early adopters are paying so I could develop the same car for 1/3 the price or 3 times the benefit at the same price down the road. And dentistry is losing some of that. And I'm not saying we should overpay. We should hold people accountable. But what we should say, and by the way, I don't believe that we should give all our business to Patterson, Shine, or these large dealers with our eyes closed. We should make sure that we're making them earn it. It's like I say with implant companies. If you want me to pay the premium for your implant, then provide me value. But if your rep doesn't provide me value, don't hold it against me when I go to mail order companies, okay? Because it's not that the mail order companies are beating you, it's that you're beating yourself by not providing some level of value or some type of benefit. You're not telling the story correctly. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's very irritating to me, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, Volinder Desai, is that his name? I think he knows you. He just said, he just shouted out to you, he says, too much fear mongering in those groups. And I agree. So I follow a lot of those groups, read a lot of the fear, and it perpetuates. And, you're obviously very in tune with your business and the way dental practices should be run. And I think when we get hung up in those Facebook groups, one person will make a comment and we're like, oh yeah, that seems like the greatest thing ever. And then we go down this rabbit hole, and we need sound principles like yourself. Like the best that I got from you today is really don't chase pennies for dollars, on the, on your 7 to 8% expenses when you should be innovating your practice.
Well, I remember I went through Bill Blatchford's coaching, which changed my career. And that was his whole point. You're spending all these hours trying to save a few dimes here and there, where you need to take that energy and multiply it 10 or 100-fold. And I'm glad, T-Bone, that you got going on that, because I felt your passion right in here. I felt passion from T-Bone right in here.
Actually,
Mark, by the way.
Oh, Mark Fleming just made a comment. He says, the trouble with T-Bone is you never know how he feels about a subject.
Mark has been there when I told somebody that he was the problem. Not Mark, but the person. Look, we're not immune to this, okay? We pull me on this like I understand business. I'll give you a great example. Yesterday, I was on a group, and somebody was talking about HOCl, and it's basically salted water of some sort, okay? And how they were buying a machine that made HOCl, and then they bought a fogger to spray it around their practice because it kills everything. I spent 6 hours yesterday on all that shit. And then I spent time learning it, researching where to buy it, and then I bought it. And then I get my receipt, and it says it'll be there at the end of June. I'll be dead by the end of June, right? I mean, so at the end of the day, we have a certain bandwidth. Each of us has a bandwidth, and our bandwidth changes. Like, my bandwidth in my 20s was much better and higher than it is now, but I'm just smarter now, more experienced, that I can accomplish more and less now than I did back then. And we have to recognize that our bandwidth is what really matters. And we can't let these groups, look, the groups are easy for me to participate in because it's part of my business. Part of my business's education is to be in these groups. Mm-hmm. But for most dentists out there, our business isn't being in groups. I'll argue that those groups are more detrimental than they are helpful. And the argument isn't that the groups aren't good. It's just the groups that they're in are not necessarily very good. Yeah,
well, one of the things in dentistry, you got to be careful about herd mentality, because it usually goes to the lowest common denominator, and then people jump on. And, I think part of it goes back. I mean, I love our profession, but if you go back to our educational culture of where you're worried about messing up on a margin, which we don't intentionally do, and if you do, you're doomed, and you're not a good dentist anymore. And that culture doesn't end after dental school. It's almost like this herd manipulation of our self-esteem, and then people don't get out of the box and they just follow the herd. And that's been my issue with dentistry for a long time, is herd mentality doesn't usually get us where we want to go.
You know what? We're working on the wrong margins, by the way. We're working on our mouth margins, and what we should be working on is our life margins.
Yes.
Because here's the truth: for 96% of us, 97, maybe even 98% of us, dentistry is a means to an end. It is not what it is for me. For me, it's my life. I mean, it's my passion. It's to a certain degree what my calling is. And so you can't live the way I live around dentistry. Dentistry has to be a means to an end. And we have to do a better job of the real margins in life. And the biggest margin that none of us spend time on is our schedule. And our schedule in the office, our schedule outside the office. Do we schedule time off? Do we schedule, plan breaks so that we don't get burned out? Do we ever schedule time for our team members so they don't get burned out? We're working on the wrong margins, and margins don't matter anymore. The dental margins are good enough. We're past that point. Bond strengths are good enough. Composites are good enough. Mm-hmm. There is no bad product that's legitimately around 3 or 4 or 5 years anymore. They just don't exist.
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, if anything, we're in a dream time of dentistry. I think of all the technology and the creativity we can do with it, and how fast things are evolving. That's what keeps my curiosity alive. And what you're talking about is a mindset that allows your curiosity to have a home.
Yeah.
And I'll argue that when you free your mind and you get clear about why you're doing something, you actually become the most productive you're ever going to be. Yeah. I am the most productive. I'll say this: I have been more productive in the last 6 weeks than I've ever been in my life, because I am very clear about where 3D dentists need to go. I'm not clear about where my practice needs to go. Okay, but because I can't control that 100%. But I am more clear now about where my education business is going to go than ever, and I'll be grateful for these last 4 or 5 weeks. For the rest, for at least the next 5 years, let's say, because something else will come up that we're going to have to change. And I think, James, a point that we're not putting enough emphasis on is diversification of your life, not just your clinical procedures, but your, how are you going to make money? And here's a trap that dentists get into, because we make a good living doing what we're doing. There are very few businesses out there that will make the living that we make with the effort that we put in. I remember 1991 or 92. My dad moved out we moved out of our hotel, cockroach motel that we were living in and running, and he didn't have a plan. He didn't have, this is what I'm going to do for income for the next step. And he just said, my goal is I need $2,000 a month to live. So my first decision is, how do I get $2,000? And then my second decision isn't how I get $10,000. It's how do I get another $2,000? And how do I get another $2,000? And that for us turned out to be a laundromat. You know, I used to pay for everything in quarters growing up. You know, another cockroach motel, and then another cockroach. You know, just it's this additive effect. We can't be singles, bunts will score runs. You know, you don't have to just hit a home run. You can have a lot of singles, and more singles are easier to come by than home runs. And
let me ask you one last question, because I know you've got, your time is so precious, and you got to check up on your daughter going to the convenience store.
She took $21. She'll be good for a while.
Okay, so on this note, one of the questions we've asked just about everybody through this: do you see this as an opportunity for maybe a dental office that hasn't incorporated technology? And it's expensive. We've all been a part of this, and we're all biased. So, do you think this would be a good time, or should they hold off? What would they be looking at getting, you think?
Look, I think the answer is both. Okay, and look. One of my biggest partners in dental education is a technology company, okay? And that goes for all of us, okay? Right. What I advise people, because I advise from the heart when I talk to people, is I say the next 2 months are not the time to make decisions, okay? The next 2 months is time to see where it all shakes out, okay? And here's the truth. Technology will get you there. It's just a matter of making sure that you don't put yourself in a position where it handcuffs you a little bit in terms of your financial flexibility. And so I'm a big believer that technology is what got me out of 2009. Cone beam, CBCT, 3D imaging pulled me out of 2009 and has driven my practice from 2009 through 2020. Okay, I had already had CAD/CAM at that time. But cone beam imaging and all the things it could do, not just buying it, but actually utilizing the tool, is what's pulled me for the last 11 years. And I just don't think it's wise for people to say, now's the time. I think let's just give it a month or two. You know, let's see, are we back to 70%? What is your market calling for? Are we at 80%? Are we at 100%? Are we at 110%? You know, and some practices are in a different situation. Some people weren't affected economically, so they may be ready to go ahead and make that decision today. But I'm of the personality that, you know what the hell difference does 2 months make? Let me make sure. Like, I want to buy some real estate right now, but I'm not buying it. Right. It's available, but I want to see, is now the time. You know, what else is coming up?
I think on your note, waiting that maybe month or two, whatever, is because these supply companies, they got to sell stuff. You know, they got to come up with something creative, and maybe I think if their creativity in the financing could possibly be the moment that somebody goes, okay, I'll do that now. But it's got to be pretty creative. Well, what do you think that they would have to come up with?
Well, I don't know what they'll have to come up with, but let me ask you this. How did the car industry come back after 2001? They did 0% financing for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
You know, and see, people don't buy on price; they buy on affordability.
Exactly. Very well stated.
It doesn't matter that it costs $60,000 or $70,000. 1% of dentists actually write a check for any of that stuff. Okay, what really matters is how much is it per month.
Right.
You know, and if you really look at it that way, it doesn't matter if it's $250 or $280. I mean, no, $30, $100 isn't going to make or break somebody. And we got to stop looking at the top line cost and look at the bottom line cost.
Yeah.
And the bottom line cost is, what is the cash flow? What does the cash flow cost you? And what is the cost of being able to implement or not implement something? And there has to be a value in that. And that's where I think the companies have to do a couple of things well. One, they have to make it enticing on the payment side. And then two, they have to make it enticing on the implementation side. So the company that wins will answer both those questions. And I don't know what that is because I'm not the consumer right now. I already own all. There's nothing to sell me at this point.
I
just bought $500 million in shares last year. So
yeah, Jenny Apekian, she just said, what amazes me is when dentists are quick to spend on technology that they refuse to use to its full capacity. Yeah. Which is exactly what you just said. Well, T-Bone,
wow.
you're a blessing, man. This has been fantastic. The hour went by just amazingly fast.
Was it an hour?
Yeah.
When I was 25 starting dentistry, I wish you were 35 because I would have followed you to the trough.
You got a lot of fans, brother.
I'm 62 and I'm still following you to the trough.
Listen, I'm 44 and I don't look as good as you now, and I certainly won't look as. I might not even be alive at 62 if I don't make some changes in my life. So.
Well, your passion and your drive, and I've always appreciated your witty intellect, and you definitely shared that today. And our advice to our audience is share this webcast. People need to know about T-Bone.
Amen.
They need to know about 3D Dentist. And I know you're going to expand. And I see your greatest gift beyond your clinical skills, and that's your leadership on helping people make better choices. And I know you have a wide variety of curriculums there. Could you just run through that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let us know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I basically just take whatever James and Todd do and I copy it.
That's right.
No. Our number one program, which I hope isn't our number one program moving forward, but it is right now, is our sleep apnea stuff. Okay. Our second most popular program is our implant programs. Our third most popular program are some of our business things that we're doing now, which because I lead that. It's the only thing I lead now. I want that to be number one because I think it is an area that we can stand out from everybody essentially. And then we have our medical billing program. We have our oral sedation. My thing is I want to provide education that actually helps people do something in their practice. I don't want to do education that just makes you smarter. I want to give you stuff that makes you richer, and richer in home and practice life. So. Yeah, we just do a lot of stuff.
That's your gift. And just by listening to you today, and again, I've followed you for a long time, and I listen to whatever you put out there. And I really think, and my challenge to you would be, you've got a gift on helping people make better business decisions and better thinking decisions. And I really think that's your gift back to people. Even though you're an incredible dentist, I think you could move and shake our profession because you've got the passion, you've got the vision, you've got the temperament to do it. And I'm right behind you. I'm a fan, and I'm so grateful you're on today.
Well, I hope you're right, because I do believe it'll be a great way for me to spend the last third of my career, would be to be helping. And it'll be the greatest gift I could give myself, would be to help others.
Well, you're already doing that. So I'm going to follow you and learn from you until I no longer can do this.
Tarun, thank you so much. Well, the way you look,
you're going to be at it for at least 10 more years. So
at least.
I hope so. I want to go out like Gordon Christensen.
He's still around?
Yeah. If you love what you do, I think, you just kind of tailor it, and you never know what your genetic system is. And, I'm having a little problem with my 4 or 5 lumbar and little things like that. And then your body starts aching a little bit more, and then your hormones change. And I won't even get in on that topic.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Menopause is a bitch, James.
Yeah. Tarun, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for all you do.
Blessing.
3D Dentist.
Everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We want to do it again. You hear?
Anytime you want.
You got it.
Hang on just for a couple minutes, okay, brother? Hang on.
I got you.
James, thanks. Wow, what a great, we've had just an amazing week. I knew T-Bone would come at the end and really hit the ball out of the park.
Well, the thing that really hit me today is, having been around the block of doing this for years, and I heard things he was saying.
Yep.
He's a genius, and he has passion. And I can tell you, I'm going to be moving people to particularly his leadership, managerial, or whatever he wants to call it, because get your ducks in order now. That gives you more options in the future. It gives you more versatility, and you'll have a better life. And, when he talks about balance, I've always had to work on balance, because my problem is that I love dentistry in many ways, but also my hobbies around videographer, and those other things all evolve that one thing. And I like to diversify that out, like what you're doing with your photography, motorbike, and things like that.
Well, his genius is his straightforwardness and his simplicity, and he knows how to communicate his messages very well, and we should all learn from Dr. T-Bone. All right, let's sign off, but we got Mike DeTola coming up next on Sunday, so everybody check that out. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Thanks, Todd, and it's a blessing to be with you folks today. Love you guys. Be safe. Keep your mind in a good direction, and we're going to get out of this thing.
Yes, we are.